So hopefully you've just watched the little video which gives you a brief introduction to the Vikings. Before Chinese New Year, we learnt about a number of different groups, the Angles and the Saxons, as well as some other smaller groups who invaded Britain after the Roman Empire ended. Today we're going to look at another group who invaded Britain during the Anglo-Saxon era, and that was a group of people called the Vikings. So first of all, have a look at this picture of a Viking. Looking at how the Viking is presented, what type of people do you think the Vikings were or were thought to be like? Maybe just pause this video and think about your thoughts, maybe write them down. Okay, so as you saw in the video, the Vikings were thought of as being quite barbaric, quite bloodthirsty, quite aggressive. But we know this wasn't the case for all of the Viking people. Having a look then at the map of the British Isles, what about Britain do you think made it so easy to invade? I'll just give you a couple of seconds to have a think about that. You can also pause the video. Okay, so Britain is an island nation. You can see that it's surrounded by water. Okay, the Vikings were very good seafarers. Their use of the longboat made them really skilled at travelling the seas, and that made Britain quite easy for them to invade. So when they first arrived, the people of Britain came to the shores to welcome them, but they soon realised that they were there to invade, and they started burning the Christian churches to the ground. The Vikings didn't believe in religion, they were pagans. We can see here that they've come over from the Scandinavian countries of Denmark, Sweden, Norway. So the Vikings came to Britain looking for lucrative new items to steal and trade. They wanted to also claim land for their own. They particularly liked to raid monasteries, so like really grand religious places, like the one at Lindisfarne. And the monasteries weren't very well protected, and they contained valuable goods like gold, jewels, imported foods, and other useful materials. The Vikings also stole manuscripts, so like religious texts and writings, and Bibles. These were then sold back to the religious leaders who could not bear to see them lost or damaged. Not all of the Vikings were bad. Some came to settle peacefully. They also liked to trade their goods. Just have a think in our previous topics. Can you think of another situation where we've talked about trade? You might just want to pause the video and have a little think about that. So of course, when we were learning about the Mayans, we learned that the different Mayan kingdoms traded with each other. We also saw that when Columbus and other explorers came from Europe and they discovered new foods and spices and the cacao bean, for example, they took it back to Europe and began to trade there. So in AD 787, this is when they attacked the monastery at Lindisfarne in Northumbria, that's in northern England. The following year, they attacked northern Britain in what we today call Scotland. In AD 865, an army of Vikings sailed across the North Sea, but this time they wanted to conquer the land. They wanted to claim it for their own rather than just raiding it. So over several years, the army battled through northern England, taking control of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia, and most of Mercia. Think back to those maps that we created showing the different Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. So in AD 866, the Vikings captured the city of York, and they set up one of their own major cities. Okay, so your task then, what you're going to do is you're going to try and be an archaeologist. Just have a think, look at the clues. What do you think an archaeologist is? So, an archaeologist is someone who studies human history through the remains of the past. If we think about the ancient Egyptians, we have the pyramids with their tombs and the mummies and sarcophaguses that we can learn all about the past, the hieroglyphics. You learned about the Romans. People often find Roman pottery, Roman coins that help us to piece together clues about how people used to live in the past. So that's the job of an archaeologist. So on the Firefly page, you'll be able to see there's some pictures of different Viking remains or artifacts. What I'd like you to do is have a look at those pictures and try to be a detective and think about what are the different artifacts? What might they have been used for? What are they made from? If you want to, you can record your thoughts on a piece of paper, or you could just discuss this with an adult. When you've done that and you've had a think, then you can go through and read the information or the descriptions of each artifact and see if you were correct.